This transmitter is exactly the same, same power transformer, so it's a 1/4 kilowatt, pretty much the same helix, but it has a little faster motor, so it's interesting what happens. The note is much higher, so it's really kind of pleasant to listen to. And that was important because, again, everybody was on the same frequency, so therefore you wanted to make your signal a little distinctive. So this person did it pretty well. I got a nice high frequency note. As amateurs, you've all heard the term throwing the big switch. Most people think that means, you know, we're turning off the main power and we're closing our station for the day or the night or something. But that's not what it meant. What you had was this motors running, and some of them, as we'll hear in a minute, were pretty large and pretty noisy, and you had to quickly get from the transmit mode to the receive mode. So pulling the big switch was signing off or signing over to the other station. And just let the motor die off just as you're sending the last character. Of course, the other operator would hear that. He would hear your motor slowing down, and he would know that, okay, it's my turn to transmit now. Over here we have yet another 1/4 kilowatt transmitter. Same power transformer. Sold a lot of these. But this is a quench gap. Instead of rotary, very dull, very quiet. So the arc is traveling, the spark, not arc. Arc is much different. The spark is traveling across the gaps inside this air-cooled, quenched gap unit here. We are making RF. You might be able to see the neon bulb here. And these were used aboard ship. The Navy liked these because they didn't like a lot of sparking going on aboard ship. The only downside was they filled up with carbon very quickly, and you had to loosen the screw, take it apart. All these fins came apart in pieces. You dump the carbon out, put it all back together, tighten it down, and you're on the air for another shift. This is a 1 kilowatt synchronous rotary gap, built in 1914 by George Batterson, who was one of the 4 founders of the AWA, and has been in continuous use ever since. A wonderful old transmitter. Synchronous rotary because you can adjust the location of the gap in relationship to the rotary gap. And the idea is to get it in sync where at the very peak of the AC wave is when the gaps are across from each other and you get the maximum power transfer. So you can demonstrate this. You should ask if anybody has a heart pacemaker, because it's possible that this could cause interference. So this switch turns on the motor and the high voltage. The high voltage transformer and capacitor are down here, and of course the arc is up here. So let's see what happens. It's pretty loud. And you can adjust the gap. You hear the raucous sound. It's really not adjusted right. That's better. Great bearings in this thing. It will go forever. Just want to make sure it's quiet enough so it doesn't drown me out. You can invite people to key any of these. It's a unique experience. You'll never get a chance to key a spark transmitter probably anywhere else. We have this one covered with plastic to make it safe, because you are keying under the primary voltage. These keys are all pretty safe, although this key had primary voltage on it. So make sure people touch just the insulated part. These are some early spark receivers used in the era. DeForest tuner. And this is another Clap Eastman spark transmitter, not functioning, but you can look inside here and see the gaps, see the dual rotary gaps. They were out of phase in time a little, so this caused a very high frequency tone, which again was one of the things you wanted to achieve, was to make your signal sound a little bit distinctive. So this is the Spark era. Spark ended by law in 1925, and here's the very early early CW transmitter, a Hartley oscillator with a beautiful rainbow-colored 50-watt tube. So they made a very good CW with this transmitter. Then there was an interesting problem. If you had a receiver that could only receive spark, you could not receive CW, because you needed that raucous modulation on your crystal set or your non-regenerative receiver, because you couldn't copy pure CW on a crystal set. So interesting, what they did is they took this very nice CW signal that you went to all this trouble to generate, and then you chopped it up with this chopper wheel. So this is just a gap or a brush on many contacts here. You turn this on, and you take the signal and just chop it on and off at about a 500 cycle rate. So thank heavens this didn't last very long until all receivers became capable of copying a CW signal. A very interesting problem they had to solve here. So when you went to CW, your old spark receivers no longer function. Another early DeForest interpanel receiver. This is REL, Radio Engineering Labs, the next generation of fairly modern equipment. This is a super regen receiver, and a couple TANs and a Hartley design. These transmitters you could use today with a very decent signal, even though they're 1925, 1926. Here we have a very interesting transmitter that used to be on the air every weekend from the AWA museum, sitting right here, and it was really kind of the pinnacle of transmitters of the era. It is a phone transmitter, AM modulated phone transmitter on 160 meters from 1922. So by 22, you had 202s, oscillator tube, driver tube, 50-watt final. So making RF in the mid-20s wasn't difficult. Here's the Heising modulator, speech amp modulator, and of course the carbon microphone. What's unique about this transmitter, the problem that amateurs had in this time period, was making DC.